You about to get it started. You about to get it started. Hey, welcome to the Death of a Dream podcast. That's right. You are right here in the right place. I'm your host, Hanna Nuss. We do this show every weekday. We even give you bonus episodes so you can, if you really want to, listen 6 days a week. Yeah, there's enough there, right? I always want you to take at least one day off if you need it, to rest, reflect, and restart. So let's go ahead and start with our great things. This weekend I had, actually Friday, I always tend to go into these places of like rest and reflection and just need for connection before I move into like a kind of steady hustle phase. It's like my soul just needs to be fed enough to just eat, right? So that a lot of times looks like me scheduling in a lot of family time, friend time, all these things. So I got to see a couple of my really good friends and just meet up with some people and just like seeing people. First off, amen, amen, amen. Amazing, right? And then secondly, just seeing people who feed my soul with no need for anything in return. And that's such a beautiful gift. Beautiful. And so in the between time, between hanging out with these people who are feeding my soul, then I also decide that I'm going to go to shops that do the same thing just to kind of waste time in between appointments. And I stumble upon this new used bookstore, and I walk in and I'm always looking for like things that you wouldn't find at Barnes & Noble or at whatever bookstore, right? And so I love old books. I love old stories. I think I love used books more than new books, but that's pretty typical of all things me. I love things that have depth and a story that I can write my own story on. And when it's new, right, like I have this ability to write a story, but there's nothing of substance there already, unless, there's a backstory. But for me, right, those things are flat. So I go into this used bookstore and I'm walking around, and all of a sudden I find this book, and it's just old and beautiful, and it's called The Joy of Words, good friends. Yes, The Joy of Words. And I thought, like, what a perfect book for me. I love words. I love spoken word. I love written word. I love words, period. And so I'm like, this book is coming home with me, no question. And I start diving into it yesterday, just for a little bit of inspo, or like, what is this book even about? The Joy of Words, huh? What a strange book to have stumbled on. And like the cover isn't a normal book cover. It's like leather bound, but bending in all the wrong places because it's just sat on a bookshelf unread for so many years. And it's amazing. So I open it, and you know the smell of old books. Like, it takes me directly back to the library at my elementary school, and I can remember the smell every time that I walked in, and I can remember breathing that in and finding my favorite story and just sitting there in that creative space. Like, I love a good book. There was actually one book that I read over and over and over again, and it was actually titled Hanna with an H on the end. But that book I had to have checked out the most amount of times at my local library. And I wonder if it's still there. I tried finding it on Amazon and I can't. But I do need to find it because that book was like, it just guided me through life. It was about hardship and overcoming. I think the character was blind, and it just spoke to me, and I read it over and over and over again. And I need to find it. But that book was an old book that no one checked out, and so I had like that original beautiful sat on a bookshelf for too long smell, and that's what this book has. Okay, so I open it, and first I see this quote, and I shared this in my Insta stories yesterday. The person who bought it for whoever they gifted this book to, right? And I can imagine they wrote on the front, "May this book give you a few moments of pleasure and relaxation, Max." Okay. Now I'm more interested. What is this book even about? And so the first page I opened, which I was drawn to this book because throughout it, there are actually illustrations drawn right behind the text, which just floors me because that seems like a terrible idea. But I can't quite imagine why they would do that, and I found that so interesting. So that's what sold me. I'm like, wait, what? And I didn't even see that there was a written note on the front. So that was like a bonus surprise. Okay, I'm geeking out at this point, but here we go. So I've been talking about finishing my book and starting to pitch it. And I opened this book and I'm just reminded, like, we got to move. And I've always loved words. So this is the first quote. "Words are things, and a small drop of ink falling like dew upon a thought produces that which makes thousands, perhaps millions, think." Lord Byron. And when I read that, I was just like, that's it. Like, we have the podcast, and that is like a daily push to keep you moving. But what if the book extends that thought? What if the book allows people, what I love about books is your interpretation can be so drastically different. And I even find that with the podcast, right? Like, people's interpretation of my title, people's interpretation of what the show might bring them varies. I actually heard one of my favorite interpretations I've ever heard this weekend over lunch with a friend, and she had said, like, I'm kind of nervous because I feel like the death of a dream will be the death of the dream everyone else had for me. Like, if I stand up and I show up for what I want for life, everybody else's interpretation dies. And I'm like, whoa, that's hitting me different, right? I can't be the same after hearing that. And that's what I love about books. It's like, you could have these pivotal moments where you take 5 sentences out of the entire book, but those 5 sentences guide you flawlessly through the rest of your life, right? And those 5 sentences could be completely different from the 5 sentences your sister reads from the whole book, your brother reads, that's what's so beautiful. And everybody can take something different from it. And the podcast, no question, is the same, but books have this funny and amazing way of interpreting just differently. The podcast really is like, here it is, here's what I'm saying, kind of hard to see it different ways. Books just have a deeper way of penetrating. So I'm just saying, I'm super excited. I was hoping to be inspired by the joy of words because I am inspired by words. And I was. Go figure. And so I didn't write this weekend. but we start pitching this week. So that's kind of my great thing. Like, I took time to build, to feed my soul with good people who just love on me more than they even should. And I can't wait to like repay the favor and love them equally, but also just start moving in the direction that helps, moving in the direction that extends what this will be and who we reach with it. Because I always thought, like, if one person needs this, that means 2 people need it. That means 100 people need it. That means we got to get it to more places, right? And it's not even me. This is my story. This isn't me having some super set of skills and coming in and being apt to coach. Like, this is just me. This is my story, and this is likely the story of more people. And that's why we have to keep going. That's why we have to write the book, and we have to do the videos, and we have to do that because one word could save someone, right? One word could be all the difference. And if I've done that, then there's no better way to exist in this world, like, at all. This book is actually The Joy of Words. It's actually mostly male written, but I found something yesterday as I was reading through this, and it served me so well. Not only the beginning portion, but then I found this, and this was like the final, all right, sis, you gonna do this, or are you gonna just keep talking about doing it? And there were multiple things in here, but I love this one specifically, and I'm not going to be able to find it because I don't bookmark, because I just love the beautiful way that things serve and love you and find you right when you need them. And I must not need it, so I'm not going to read it. But it was inevitably what I just said. Like, if my service to this world has been helping one person, then it would have been worth it. And that's the most beautiful thing that I could ever walk on this world and do. So that's why we're here. And it's not even like I'm like, oh, here's how you would do it. Here's your way out. I'm just telling you what I experienced, where I showed up in my life, and how I started walking towards deciding what my life would be. I'm no expert. None of the things that I say here are going to be surefire ways for you, but they have helped me to a better place. And so maybe they would help you too. So that's my great thing. Just absorbing friends and love and free time. And now we kind of go into the winter where it's just work and move and grind and find, right? So that's my great thing. Go ahead and take time for yourself to recognize yourself for your greatness. It's imperative. You have to do it. I can't sing awkwardly anymore about it. If you're not willing to listen to me, then I won't stop singing. Okay. Let's go ahead and get in. I was going to talk about competition today, and this just kind of kept being served up to me, and I can't help but go here because my mind goes to this instantly. Here I am. Oh my gosh, I'm going to write a book. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, but like Glennon Doyle writes books, and she's so smart and so awesome and amazing. Hanna, you're never going to be that. Why would you write a book? What if you write a book and no one reads it? Like, what if you do all these things and it's for naught and it's stupid, and holy crap, you realize that, like, all these amazing people write books. So, right? And then I'm just sitting here and I'm like, it's the same as with my podcast. All of these amazing people do podcasts. Amazing, right? And yet there are still people who listen to mine, right? And so there will still be people who read my book. And then I realize and become shockingly aware of the fact that my book will never be competing with Glennon Doyle or Austin Channing Brown or, right, fill in the blank of the amazing book writer that you know. It'll never be competing with them. If I can't stop competing with myself. Like, right now, the biggest hurdle in front of me is me pushing send on an email. And I'm not willing to push send because there are amazing artists out there who really know how to write books. Like, you don't know how to write a book, Hanna. No question. Right? But I do know my story. And there's no one else that knows it. There's no one else that could write this book. You could try. But no one else knows what I know. And that's the same with anything, right? Like, why am I so hung up on this idea that I have to be this one thing, this one amazing thing, that I have to compete with these amazing people? Like, if the book gets put out there, I'm not competing, right? Then I just become a person in that stratosphere, right? Like, it could change where I even am. And yet I'm just sitting here, paralyzed, waiting, hoping that someone asks me once again, right? Because there's fear in that competition space. But I'm not competing with anybody if I never put it out there, and I'm not competing with anybody, period. I'm competing with myself every day. That's it. Because if I can't beat her, if I can't beat the naysayers inside of this head right here, yay, then I can't even step onto a stage. And like, I was willing to work and find confidence in places where people backed me or acknowledged me or whatever. Like, and that felt safe. And now this new space just feels unfamiliar and yet familiar, right? Like, this isn't new. There weren't people asking you to do what you were doing before, and yet you just moved. And so here we are at another tipping point where eventually we just have to move again, right? Where we just have to get past that moment, where we just have to push record, or we just have to push publish, or we just have to move, right? And that's where we get every time that we're kind of taking that next step, that next venture. And we put up these new fences, these new mountains right in front of us to stop us, to hold us back, to keep telling ourselves that we're not good enough, that this isn't possible. And those mountains build over time. And then eventually we're like, oh no, they're too tall. I can't do this. Bye. Nice to know you. Come on. Right? Come on to myself. Come on to you. This is apparently how this works. So 2 years ago, I finally got over it. I wrote stuff down. I wrote real dreams down, real ones, like ones that I actually believed that I could never reach. And every day that we step closer, right, that we keep going in pursuit of those dreams, and not all at once, but like more doors open, more things come to fruition, more things happen. And that moment of walking, just walking, it had to take just knocking one thing down and getting over the fact that I was competing with the whole world, because you are in everything, right? But at the end of the day, if you can't take on and beat that person in your head every day, you don't get to compete with anybody, right? Your biggest competitor is yourself. That's a quote somewhere. I know it because it's so true. So as we venture into like this next set of dreams, right? I've been walking for a while on this one, on this, right? The podcast, this movement. And now that's seemingly safe. We've been doing that. We've been here, right? And I'm kind of fearing that next step. I'm wanting to build up new mountains to stop me from continuing, because it's scary. It's unknown, right? It's another step in putting myself out there. It's almost, to me, it's a chance to further fail, right? Like, this could go wrong. But what have I come to know over the last year and a half? That I'm not going to stop. That this is energy producing, this work. And so if someone tells me no, that's the worst that can happen. And then what? Go back to the drawing board. Figure out your next step. Keep moving forward. No is a part of life. Failing is a part of life. And I've always loved failing, because that's where I learn, that's where I thrive, that's where I move. Like, I can't even live a perfect life if I wanted to. It's not an option. There are people who do, and they are amazing, and they're unicorns, and I'm super jealous of them for the end of time. That made no sense, and here we are, until the end of time. I'm just me, period. Right here. This is who you have. This is the person that's in front of you. And when I started, right, I was just like, okay, I can do this one thing. I'm confident that I'll maybe get better. Maybe I won't, but maybe I'll just keep doing it because it's the only option right now, right? Like, I wanted to write a book for the longest time, and I kept writing all these little books, and I'm like, maybe if I do that. No, that wasn't the real work that I wanted to do, right? But then I just took the only step that I could that made sense. And now we've been in this space where we've gotten comfortable, we've gotten confident, and now we need to take the next step. And I have been building mountains for the last 4 months, but 2 of those months were really spent in just a low place of complete fallout from the loss of my identity, from the loss of everything I identified myself with. And that took a lot of time to process and allow myself to fully feel the lowness of that reality. And now the last couple of months have been like building mountains and then figuring out how to tear them back down. And today I'm just sitting right here in front of you and saying, like, I'm building my own mountains, trying to stop myself. I've been telling myself that it's a competition thing, that I could never survive the competition, and yet it doesn't matter because I'm not even trying to compete, sitting here losing my own competition with myself. right? And every time that I've had to take a next step, it's taken falling, right? Falling and getting back up and finding out how to be strong again, and like surrounding myself with people who I find strength in, who push me further than I can push myself, who believe in me, who build me, who back me, right? And those things are what keep me going. And they see things that I can't even see in myself. And so we got to move. We got to take the next step. This week, I'll start pitching the book. And the book will essentially be season 1, even though it will kind of tell the full story, the full background, all in one all-inclusive place. And so that's so exciting. That'll be an extension of this podcast, of this work, of this movement, of the Death of a Dream movement, of sitting in your life and realizing that you could be fine forever, but deciding that you want more. And navigating that and figuring out how and the things that held you back from that, and why you don't believe that you even deserve more, or why shouldn't you just sit with fine, right? And yeah, everything's easier there, no question. And no one's gonna sit at Christmas and go, you know, Hannah, really thought you had more in you. No, because really, fine is a pretty normal circumstance, right? And no one's going to question it. No one, ever. And so you have to decide if you are, if fine is okay with you. And for me, that was the hardest step forward, right? Deciding. And then giving up anything that wasn't. I still hard swallow when I think about that. Because it's not like, I don't know. I don't know what is fine, what isn't fine for you, what if your life is playing out the complete way that you thought it was going to, like, I don't know that. And that's why this podcast exists. It's not for people who are on the perfect path, who are living the life that they want. It's for people who are questioning if they are, right? Who don't know if they decided this life or if it's happened to them. And that's what I started to explore. And that's essentially what the book will be about. The first book of, well, many, but 5 for sure, because that's what I write down in my dreams. I don't know why it's 5. I can't explain it. It just has always been 5. Okay. So we're pitching. We're going to take the next step. And when I say we, I mean I am, but when I do say we, I mean all of us, because I'm not taking this step by myself. I'm not doing this without the backing of all of you, right? And the surety that if I prove that this can be done, that you can show up for your life, that you can decide that you want more, and if I do pitch and my book gets signed, like, that's an actual dream that I wrote down, that I wanted for my whole life, that I never believed that I could do. And so if I do that, right, then you can do your dreams too. And that's why it's important that this happens, right? That we move this forward, that we make this a movement, that we stop signing up for fine, that we stop competing with anyone but ourselves. Because that's not for us to decide who wins. Winning is subjective. You decide what is winning for you. For me, winning has always been helping one person, changing one life. So I'm not competing. I'm changing more than one life if the book happens. And so let's do that. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world.